What is up, everybody? Welcome into this NBA 2024-2025 season team previews. Jerry Walker, and alongside me today is Matt Hanifan. And Matt, we're talking the Golden State Warriors today. One of those really interesting teams that they aren't quite what they used to be. We saw the dynasty come and go. Klay Thompson going off to Dallas. Draymond Green looking like he should be retiring at this point, and Steph Curry still leading the way. What do you think of their season last year? Fifth place finish in the West, in their division, 10th in the West. Overall, not that good.
I mean, I thought last year was a little bit. I mean, obviously with the Draymond suspension, he put Rudy Gobert in a chokehold, which was. I don't have anything against Rudy Gobert. I don't hate Rudy Gobert or anything like that. I'm not one of those people, but it just was a funny moment because you never ever see that. Hope it doesn't happen again to any player, but for the entertainment purposes, it was somewhat funny. He elbowed Yusuf Nurkic in the face. He was, suspended. I mean, there wasn't like a length, like he had the 5-game suspension for the Rudy thing, I think, but in terms of how much time he missed after the fact, just because of all of his previous instances, there really wasn't a suspension. He missed a total of 27 games during the season. But the thing that I do like about this Golden State team, and I guess how last year was, I don't want to say blessing in disguise, but like they did get ascension from a lot of their young guys. And Draymond even said it himself later in the season. Like the young guys are the reason why we are in this position to be. I mean, at the time they were in the play-ins, they were fighting for a play-in spot with Houston right behind them. Jonathan Kuminga had a phenomenal season. Brandon Podziemski, who they drafted 19th overall, he really blossomed, and he was a guy that I liked late pre-draft, but I wasn't like incredibly sure how he would be like as an NBA player, especially as a rookie. And he completely blew my expectations out of the water. He's tough as hell. He rebounds the ball like an MFer. He can shoot the ball well. Like he wasn't really consistent from the 3-point or from the free throw line, but he shot, I think, around like 38% from deep last year. He really blossomed, especially when Klay wasn't playing as well for a stretch during the season. And then Trace Jackson Davis, who hand up, I think I was just wrong on. I'm willing to admit it. I think I was just wrong on him as a player. Like I wasn't particularly high on him as a prospect coming out of Indiana. Again, he I think was their best center last year.
When Draymond Green tended to be your starting center, you had a lot of time for these younger guys to get experience in playing, and it's gonna be spicy. Kuminga's getting the starts now. Podziemski's going to be filling in for Klay Thompson at that shooting guard position, I'd assume. What are you expecting from him and from these kind of younger guys for this season?
I'm expecting them to grow, and obviously with an increased role. Like they were Golden State, the brass, all of the reports that came out. Like they're very high on Brandon Podziemski. They're also high on Jonathan Kuminga. They're like obviously these were two of the guys who were prominently involved in trade talks throughout the offseason. You know how that goes. But they're very high on these individuals. There was a little bit of a conundrum last season with, you remember, like the whole Jonathan Kuminga Steve Kerr thing where he came out and said he doesn't trust Steve Kerr. Well, he came out the other day. He's like, I'm excited to play under Steve this season. Like I think that fence has been mended a little bit. Like I think those two are on the same page now relative to where they were at the start of last season. And again, like when Klay Thompson exits, I think there's room for these guys to grow. And these guys are going to have extra opportunity, and these guys are going to. I don't think it's going to be this. It may not be the same Golden State system. I'm not sure what Steve Kerr is going to deploy without Klay Thompson, but these guys are going to be thrust into bigger roles, and I think both of those guys will exceed the roles. And it also just depends on how DeAnthony Melton's playing. I know we haven't gotten to the transactions of the offseason yet, but like how DeAnthony Melton is, how Kyle Anderson plays, how Buddy Hield fares. That all leaves I'm not like bookending Kuminga. I mean, I think Kuminga's going to be starting, but I'm not going to say that Podziemski's going to start, 40, 50, 60 games. He may come off the bench as a sixth man behind one of these guys.
Yeah.
I'm not completely sure yet.
No, and you brought up the point of, there is a new vibe there. It doesn't seem like they'll be running the same, just get down and let Steph and Klay shoot the ball lights out for the entire game. It's not going to work as well this year. You did mention also that they made some moves. Signed DeAnthony Melton, got Kyle Anderson, which I think that's an underrated pickup a little bit. And then they also got Buddy Hield from Philadelphia. What do you think of these three guys coming in and what their role might be this upcoming season?
Well, I mean, Buddy Hield, I know what his role is going to be. Buddy buckets. Yeah. Put the thing in the cylinder. Like that's what he's going to be tasked to do. Again, I'm not sure if it's going to be the same motion laden offense. I mean, I'm sure it will be to some extent, but I don't know how much of that is going to be run through just Steph. Is it going to be run through Buddy? He kind of started for Buddy. It's been like an interesting career arc, especially after he got traded to Philly last year, because like he started out red hot, but then he kind of got shelved out of he was kind of out of the rotation for a little while. At least that's what it felt like. And so I'm interested to see like how much are they going to trade offense for defense in some of these lineups? Like, are you going to have to put Buddy Hield in the same lineup as you would like a Wiggins? Or something of that ilk, to where he's just not because something Golden State did struggle with a lot last year was point of attack defense. And they did get DeAnthony Melton to help with that to some extent. They did get Kyle Anderson to help out with just some of their, wing defense, a guy who can guard multiple positions. Like for Buddy, I'm going to put the ball in the basket. And he's a historically great shooter. I don't think many people really have compartmentalized that. Like he may not be Stephen Curry. He may not even be Klay Thompson, but he's one of the best shooters really in the entire league, especially when he gets on a heater. DeAnthony Melton, awesome 3-and-D guy, like really, really, really good 3-and-D guy. And I think that's one of the more underrated acquisitions of the summer. Like he only 1 year, $13 million. I think they got him at a great price. And he's a guy who, again, can handle the ball a little bit, but defensively, he's a guy who he could probably guard 2-3 different positions. He can create deflections. He has the length. He has the instincts. He has like good dexterity, good hand-eye, everything that you want in a guy like who can do that. In addition to shooting 36, 37, 38, 39% from three, like he on good volume too. And so I think he's going to take some of that burden off some of that creation burden off Steph for a little bit, as will Podziemski, as will a couple of these other guys. Mm-hmm. Kyle Anderson's interesting because like he is that mold where like he's slow. Like he had I think probably the worst shooting season of his career last year. Like everything was off. I know there's been videos released this offseason of his form sped up a little bit. I'm not a big offseason workout guy because I want to see you do it in a game. But he is just an interesting piece to where like I'm not super sure. Like I think he will be in the rotation off the bench, but I'm just interested to see like how often he's used, how he's used. Is he going to be an extra ball handler that Steve Kerr is going to have to deploy with Steph or some of these other guys who are off the ball? Like I don't know. I'm interested to see what his role actually looks like in this context, but I do think it's a very good addition because they did, I think, get him at like a fairly reasonable price tag, albeit on a sign and trade. So all three of those guys, I do think add some. Those three guys add a lot. Just they have differing skill sets and they complement each other to some extent really well. In addition to complementing the other pieces that Golden State has, again to some extent.
Absolutely. I mean, there were only two notable losses that I can see or can think of. And it was Chris Paul going to San Antonio and Dario Saric going to Denver. Do you think those are – how big of losses do you think those are? Or do you think it's kind of they upgraded in ways with bringing in Melton and Kyle Anderson in replace of them?
I don't think they're big losses only because, like, again, we talked about this during our Nuggets – preview. Please go check that out if you haven't already. I do think Trace Jackson Davis kind of took a stranglehold on that rotation. Especially like he was starting games last very portion of the season. And so like I do think he kind of stepped into that role. And I do think Kevon Looney is again a fine backup. Elite rebounder, very good screener, can finish around the rim. Like he's a guy that I'm more than happy with giving, 15 minutes to on a nightly basis. I'm perfectly fine with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So I'm not super worried about the loss of Saric, even though Trace does compromise their spacing a little bit. Like he isn't a shooting big, but he does so many different things on the court that I don't think it matters. Like he's a very good rebounder. He's a very good shot blocker. He's a vertical spacer. Like all different kinds of things that he's a guy that I would want. Like he's a pogo stick. He's very athletic. And so like I'm fine with that. Chris Paul, again, I'm not. To me, his fit in Golden State was always weird. Like I never, just from a play style, stylistically, like he does take some of the point guard burden off of Steph. Like he is again the true point guard. He's the point god. But I don't in this context like he does help them out a lot. He did help guys like Trace Jackson Davis out a lot, which is like the lobs and the stuff like that. But he wasn't a guy that I thought fit super duper well, especially defensively. Like again, Golden State was not a good point of attack defensive team last year. That was my biggest worry with them heading into the season. It was my biggest worry with them or one of my biggest worries for them throughout the season. And it just wasn't something that I particularly loved. So, and I do wonder who's going to take a step up in that department. Is it going to be? I'm guessing it's probably going to be Podziemski or someone like that. And like, there's a lot of guys on this team who can handle the ball, like Melton, like Podziemski. And so I'm not really concerned about that portion either. So I don't think the losses, or at least those two particular losses outside of Klay, are detrimental or anything to their season. We can jump into season predictions. I actually kind of like their team, and I like their team to be a little better than they were last year.
Really? Okay. So what do you think? You think they finish higher than bottom in the Pacific again and make it to the playoffs and like last year where they did fall in the play-in? Or?
Yeah, I do have them as a 6 seed. Again, it's some of these teams in the West. It's like
so hard to tell.
It's hard, but I do think they are slightly better. And again, 46 games got them to 10 seed. So I think they're going to get around 48, 49. I think I have them at 48 right now.
48.
And I think they're more than capable of winning that. Again, assuming the stuff with Draymond doesn't happen again, assuming Steph is able to stay healthy at this stage of his career, which is a big ask. He is coming off his first ever gold medal. Usually those gives players confidence and an injection of life heading into a new season, but you just hope the wear and tear doesn't catch up to him in any capacity, because no one wants to see anyone hurt, especially Stephen Curry, who obviously the greatest shooter ever. And if he's hurt, they're sunk. Really, like that's just the reality of it. And so, but no, I'm at least on paper, I'm confident in this team winning more games than they did last year.
Okay, I like that. I think they're going to finish right around the same thing. I could see them being I think they finished in the 8 or 9, but I do think that they find a way to make it into the playoffs out of the play-in. So I'm just concerned about certain aspects that I'm just not sure. And it just, to me, it feels like weird that this era of the great Golden State Warriors teams is now coming to an end very quickly, but should be fun to see. Just final couple questions. Do you have any X factors? I know we've talked about a lot of players today for this Warriors team. Is there any one player or anything, like you mentioned injuries and all that, is there anything that stands out to you as like, this is the X factor for this Warriors team?
It's Kuminga. Kuminga and Podziemski are the two guys, specifically Kuminga. Because again, last year, and this is really unfortunate how this unfolded, Andrew Wiggins was away from the team each of the last 2 seasons because his ailing father. His father did pass away earlier this month, so rest in peace to Mitchell Wiggins. And obviously, thoughts and prayers go out to his family and everyone around him in his life. But the thing with that is that Kuminga, when specifically when Wiggins wasn't playing up to expectation, again, a lot of it was due to personal stuff. I think it's fair to take that into account. Kuminga was definitely the guy on the rise, and I think heading into a contract year, he's actually due for an extension. Like, he can be extension eligible right now, but I think if they wait until the end of next season, he becomes a restricted free agent. But anyway, considering he's extension eligible at this point, he wants to prove it again next season when he's on the floor. And the thing that I give Golden State credit to is, like, I think they have taken a lot of heat for how they've developed players just in recent years, because I don't think people have given them enough credit. And I think people are out on some of these guys like Moses Moody, who I liked coming out of college. He just may not be – I don't know if he cracks the rotation or makes any sort of impact. We've seen glimpses of it. But just in general, I think people have criticized his developmental staff just in recent years for how they've gone about certain things. But I do give him credit for how they developed Jonathan Kuminga. Because he was a very, 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 very raw player. And again, it took some patience. It took a couple years of not getting a whole lot of opportunity, but I think you saw last year what he can become, and now he's entering his age 22 season, wanting to be a full-time starter. And I do think he can be a full-time starter by the season's end. He may even start the season at small forward and have Wiggins coming off the bench, which is also fine too. But there is, like, I am high on him, and I do think, like, with this extra opportunity, without Klay Thompson being there, with under Draymond Green's mentorship, people give Draymond a lot of shit, but what he's good at is mentoring players. Like,
he's a good veteran presence,
at least mentoring players outside of Jordan Poole.
Yeah,
but like,
did something to him, but
yeah. But like, I do think Kuminga takes another leap this year, and I do think if he takes like a sizable leap, this team can absolutely be a playoff team. Because again, you saw plenty of glimpses of it last year with the shooting, with the rebounding. He's very good around the rim. Like, he's athletic as hell. Like, he can put it together defensively, I think, in the long term too. And so, like, he's definitely a guy that I'm keeping an eye on in terms of like his development and how his season goes, because he is definitely a guy that, like, last year I watched him, I was like, ooh, like, I like what I'm seeing here. Like, this is a guy who definitely has something, whether this maintains for an entire season or not. And I think for the last probably 50 to 75% of the season, he was consistently one of their better players, and he was the reason why, or one of the reasons why, they were in the play-in chase to begin with after Draymond got suspended. And he just continued that for the most part. And so I'm very much looking forward to him, and I do think he is their X factor. In addition to Podziemski, who, again, I love, 6'5", can practically do everything on the court. He's going to take 1 billion charges a game. He's going to be such a pain in the ass for teams to go up against. But if he's your teammate, he's going to be a guy that you love and that you want on your team 11 times out of 10.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he's got that dog in him, and he will be a pain in your ass no matter what end of the court you are, no matter who you are. He's going to be hard, and I think that's my my X factor is him as well, just for the reason that he is filling in. He is replacing Klay Thompson, and we know how important Klay has been to the Warriors forever. So can he fill those shoes and put the pressure behind him of having to fill those shoes and just play your game and play it the way you do? Because when you do, it's pretty solid. So, any other final thoughts you have on the Warriors this season, or anything that's going around with Golden State at the moment?
Another guy that I want to shout out, who we haven't talked about yet, and I'm mad at myself for not talking about him yet, is Gary Payton.
Yeah.
He is a guy that, like, he's injuries have kind of riddled his seasons each of the last 2 years, and we've seen what he can do in this kind of context. And so, again, I talked about earlier about their point of attack defense. He is definitely a guy that that can help out with that a lot. I just hope he's able to stay healthy and stay on the court, because when he is, he's another guy that can just completely, wreck any action, wreck any offense possession for an opposing team. Like he is definitely a guy that I'm also looking out for, and I think he's also expiring this season. Yeah, he's expiring this season, and so he's going to be a guy, looking to get another extension. He's entering his age 32 season. So he's someone else that I'm very much keeping an eye on for this particular season.
Oh yeah, I like that shout. Yeah, can't believe I let him slip by and miss that call because he's a strong presence off the bench, and that's something I think the Warriors are going to have to rely on a little more this year because Draymond and Steph. I mean, last year Steph was playing 33 minutes a game, more or less. I don't know if he's going to be able to play as much this year. Same with Draymond. He always plays quite a few minutes, so I'm expecting his toll to be a little less. So it does make it open for these guys off the bench to have a bigger role and have more minutes and be more important to it. But Matt, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you guys, the viewers, for watching. Make sure you click subscribe to that Vendetta Sports Media YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our NBA previews. We will be doing all 30 teams before the season tips off on October 22nd. Make sure you check out the vendettasportsmedia.com website to check out all of our written previews that we'll have up on every NBA team. So if you want your fill there, we'll have it for hockey, NBA, MLB playoffs are coming up, NFL season, all your sports, all your talk, all your coverage. vendettasportsmedia.com, and we'll see you guys next time.